Okay, first off, before we get started with any of the practical exercises, let's have a look at exactly what journeying is and exactly what we're going to be doing throughout the course. Um, Journeying is a process of basically seeing the unseen, crossing the veil, visiting the other worlds. People describe it all different ways. People describe it as shamanic, and it is kind of a shamanic practice, yes. Um, it's a process that involves, a few different steps, and there's a few little boxes we have to tick and things we have to practice before we go. You can't jump into the other world. And you certainly can't kind of jump in and know exactly what you're seeing straight away usually. So there's a few little stages we're going to go through along the way. But first we'll just kind of chat about exactly what it is and exactly what you should expect while you're doing this. Um, when we talk about the other world, people from different traditions will always kind of describe it a little bit differently. You have some people that view it as just one set place. You cross the veil, you cross the hedge, you're on the other side, that's where you are. Some people have it split into all different places. Some people split it into 3, some people split it into 9, some an infinite number. I usually teach it by splitting it into 3: the middle world, the upper world, and the lower world. The first of these worlds that we'll be launching into, it will be the middle world. It's normally sort of where you start off. It's your entry point into the other world. Um, People usually view the middle world as a slightly altered version of this world. It's like the same but a bit different. Um, I view the middle world. I was going to the village where I actually live, which at the minute is a little bit unusual for me because I've just moved house and it's still kind of, it's still new things, very new things being discovered right at my entry point, which is normally the point I'm really familiar with. Um, but yeah, it's the same. There's very recognisable features. You feel as if you know where you are, but it will look slightly different. But that's generally how it appears to people. Um, Usually the middle world is the place you go looking for answers to questions. What's going to happen? I need more information about this. I need help making this decision. Which are the reasons we go journeying in the first place. No one goes journeying just for a laugh. You normally go with a purpose in mind. So the middle world is where you tend to spend a lot of time, especially when you're first getting kind of started with journeying. The upper world is a place that is usually sort of governed by teachers and guides of inspiration, of ideas, of thought, of communication. Um, Sometimes people who are kind of naturally quite artistic, naturally communicate ideas, quite intellectual people, sometimes do find themselves in the upper world a little bit more than a lot of people would. The lower world tends to be governed by ancestral spirits. People do sometimes freak out a little bit when you start talking about the lower world because they're like, do you want to go down to the lower world? It sounds awful. There's parallels drawn with kind of Christian theology of going down into the fiery deeps, and people sometimes panic a little bit. That's not what we're doing. The ancestral kind of side of things is in the lower world, and it's often where you go to deal with issues that have been in your past. And if you go on to do past life work at any point, you spend a lot of time in the lower world. It's nothing to be worried about, but we will possibly in fact probably at some point through the course of doing this, you will end up going to one or the other, if not both. So it's good to know about them and don't be panicked by them. The way they look, the upper world and the lower world, tend to vary a bit more than the middle world. They tend to look a little bit more different. And there's no hard and fast rules to this. You could view it a completely different way to somebody else. And it often it involves your own perception and your own individuality. For example, I view my upper world always looks yellow. Always looks yellow. Of course, yellow is associated with the element of air, which is about communication and ideas and obviously I'm a writer and I do this, so it makes perfect sense for me. Possibly wouldn't for anyone else. So it's fine. There's no real hard and fast rules here, which is why it's fun and why it's also a good idea to get on the Facebook groups that we have and send me emails anytime you want, because it's hard to make big generalizations. So that's the three places we're going to be looking at once we cross over. Middle Wales, where we'll spend a lot of time. Upper Wales and Lower Wales, where we'll be spending little bits of time. Of course, we've got to actually get there first. So throughout the course, we will also be meeting guides, which are really important. Hear people talking about spirit guides a lot. No one really ever just has one. We also have quite a few. You usually have one that you're very attached to, that kind of stays with you everywhere. That is a lifelong guide, and you get very attached to. Some people have more than one, but you usually have one or two, a low number of these very sort of key spirit guides that will stay with you. We will also be visiting a gateway place. Start thinking about this now, because it's quite key and quite important to when we go on to the next stages. Your gateway place is a place that exists in the real world, where you feel emotionally quite calm and quite happy. It shouldn't be anywhere that you have any sort of negative feelings attached to, but pick somewhere in your mind where you've actually been, where you've actually experienced, that we can draw on in order to use it as sort of a crossing over point once we go on to the gateway and guide meditations. Before all of that, we're going to be doing some grounding work, which is really key. So that's kind of going to be how the course goes along, and obviously we're going to be learning how to interpret things as we go through, which is, again, the key reason why we do this. A little kind of introduction just to why I'm doing this and the place where I'm coming from is journeying is, as I said earlier on, it is usually seen as a form of shamanic work. I obviously the site's Hedge Retreat, that's how I got involved with it. I started to research and learn journeying in order to be able to do the work that I do with hedge riding and with divination and with the other elements of Hedge Retreat. But the journeying element and is one of the very, very key points of it, so it's a really important thing to me, which is why I'm now doing these courses on it. Almost every culture has some form of spiritual history that involves some form of journeying, shamanic trance work, working with spirits, working with the other side. Obviously it varies from culture to culture, but it's very, it's prevalent everywhere, and it's a very sort of universal concept when you look back on it. So don't feel that you've come to this and you think, oh, am I going to be able to do this because I don't have links to this culture or that culture, I don't practice this tradition, or I'm not pagan, I'm not I don't practice witchcraft, I don't I'm not psychic. Don't think any of that. Okay, it is a practice that's practiced by a huge number of people, and although I'm obviously learned it because I'm using it in a paganism and hedge witchcraft context, we are going to cover this in a way that should hit everyone and should be practicable to everybody on a pretty even playing field, regardless of where you're coming to it from, where you're hoping to go with it in the future. Just going back to that a little bit, as I said, we're going to teach this course in a way that is practicable and identifiable to as big a number of people as we can cover. And a lot of people, say, well, what if I belong to a spiritual belief path, a religion that doesn't believe in, in the possibility of this other world? Is it really real? I can't answer that for you. For me, I am pagan and I practice witchcraft, and for me, the other world is the spiritual part of the spiritual side of our existence and of our world, and it is there, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. A lot of people do this. I've delivered courses to people who of all different religious backgrounds, and to atheists alike, who don't see this as anything sort of spiritually disconnected from us, or any kind of divine element to it. They see it as something that they're visiting inside themselves, a way of contacting their subconscious, of a way that our minds have built these worlds, and they don't get any less out of it than the people who view it as a real spiritual practice, the way that I do and the way that a lot of other people do. So people say to me, do you really believe these other worlds are there? Are they real? Do these people I encounter, these beings I encounter, really, really exist? For me, yes, they do. For you, you kind of have to experience it and make your mind up. It's not really for me to dictate one way or the other, but whatever you get out of it, I've never had anybody say that it hasn't been a positive experience. So, at the end of the course, I'm sure you'll have drawn your own conclusions, and I really look forward to hearing them.